The inner path to healing. Rediscovering what modern life forgot. You're tired, but you keep going. You smile when you don't feel okay. You tell people you're fine, even though deep down, something feels off. Your body aches in quiet ways. Your mind won't stop spinning. You've tried eating better, sleeping more, meditating when you can. You've taken the pills, done the blood work, followed the plans, but still, something's missing. You're doing everything right. So why do you still feel wrong? No one tells you that healing can feel like a mystery, that there are days when you do all the healthy things and still feel broken, not just in your body, but in your soul. And maybe you've never said it out loud, but a quiet question has started to form. What if the way we've been taught to heal isn't really healing at all? We live in a world that treats the body like a machine. Break it, fix it, treat the symptoms, move on. But ancient wisdom, long before hospitals and diagnostics, saw things differently. It saw the body, mind, and spirit as one. It understood that illness isn't just physical. It's emotional, energetic, spiritual. That your body reflects how you think, how you live, how you feel about yourself. In today's world, we chase solutions, quick fixes, biohacks, supplements. But real healing doesn't come from adding more. It comes from removing what disconnects you from your own life, from your breath, from your nature, from your truth. As a monk, I've seen people come to our monastery burned out, anxious, desperate. They arrive with long histories, medical files, pills, routines. But we don't give them anything. We just ask them to sit, to breathe, to eat slowly, to sleep with the sun. And something extraordinary happens. Their nervous systems begin to settle. Their digestion improves. Their hearts start to feel again. Their bodies soften, not because of any treatment, but because they stopped fighting themselves. That is what modern life forgot. That healing doesn't come when you fix the body. It comes when you remember how to live in harmony with it. This journey is not about rejecting medicine. It's about reclaiming your wisdom. It's about remembering that your body was designed to heal. If you give it the space, the stillness, and the compassion it's been starving for. So if you've been searching for something deeper, something more honest, then stay. Because this isn't just another wellness video, this is a doorway to slowness, to awareness, to coming home to yourself. And maybe, just maybe, this time, the healing will be real. Mind and body, one breath, one illness, one healing. You're not just living in your body, you're living through it. Everything you think, everything you feel, it flows directly into your cells, your muscles, your heartbeat, your breath. But for some reason, modern life has taught us to treat the mind and the body as two separate things, like neighbors in the same building who rarely speak. And so, when the body cries out, we try to fix it in isolation without ever asking what the mind might be whispering beneath the surface. I once met a young woman in her 30s who had been suffering from chronic digestive issues for years. She tried all the right diets, medications, even holistic treatments, but nothing helped. Her body felt inflamed, unpredictable. What no doctor had ever asked her, though, was, "What are you holding in your gut emotionally?" In one of our conversations, she broke down and said, "I've been swallowing my anger for years. I never let myself feel it." And as she began to sit with that truth, to breathe through it, instead of burying it, her body slowly began to respond. Her symptoms didn't vanish in a day, but something deeper began to shift. Her healing didn't start with a medicine. It started with honesty. This is the truth we so often miss. The body doesn't just react to the environment. It reflects your inner world. The thoughts you carry every day, the tension you absorb, the stories you repeat in your mind, they all show up somewhere, sometime, in the body. Even science now says what ancient monks have known for centuries. Dr. Gabor Mate, a renowned physician and trauma expert, puts it this way: the body says no, even when the mind says yes. When we suppress emotions, override boundaries, or chronically live in fear, the body often becomes the voice we can no longer ignore. And that voice is not trying to punish you. It's trying to awaken you. The Buddha taught that the mind is the forerunner of all things, that what we dwell on becomes our reality. And in the body, that truth becomes visceral. When the mind is peaceful, the breath deepens. The nervous system settles. Blood pressure lowers. Digestion improves. The body remembers how to be well. But when the mind is restless, resentful, afraid, it tightens, inflames, hardens. The body literally prepares for a battle that may never come. So if you're struggling with your health, don't just ask what's wrong with your body. Ask what your body is trying to say about how you're living, thinking, and feeling. Illness is not your enemy. It's a messenger. It's a reminder that something within you wants your attention, not your judgment. Breathe gently now. Feel your body soften. Let your mind know it's safe to slow down. Healing doesn't begin with a cure. It begins with a conversation between your body and your mind. And when they finally begin to listen to each other again, that's when everything changes. Nature's wisdom, returning to the rhythm of life. You were never meant to live this fast. Your body was not designed to rush from screen to screen, from one artificial light to another, eating meals you don't taste, breathing air you barely notice, surrounded by sounds that drown out your own inner voice. You were meant to rise with the sun, to feel the wind on your skin, to walk with bare feet on the earth, to rest when it gets dark. Somewhere along the way, we lost that rhythm, and with it, we lost a piece of ourselves. Nature has always known how to heal, not through force, not through control, but through rhythm. A tree doesn't rush to grow. A river doesn't fight its flow. The moon doesn't struggle to shine, and the seasons never resist their own change. There's no anxiety in the forest, no burnout in the mountains, no depression in the song of birds at sunrise. What you find instead is presence, pure, effortless presence. And in that presence, healing happens. I remember a man who came to us after years of chronic anxiety. His mind was always racing, his sleep broken, his body tight with tension. I didn't tell him to meditate or chant. I just asked him to go into the forest. Every day, just walk, slowly, without a phone, without a goal. At first, he was restless, bored. He said, "It feels like a waste of time." But by the third day, something shifted. He noticed the sound of leaves. He noticed the scent of soil. He saw the sky change color. By the end of the week, his breath had changed. His voice was softer. His eyes no longer darted with fear. Not because he learned a technique, but because his nervous system remembered a rhythm it had forgotten. This is the medicine modern life ignores, the natural intelligence of the earth and our place within it. We are not separate from nature. We are nature. The same elements that form the stars, the rivers, the trees, they form your bones, your blood, your breath. But we treat nature like a luxury, like something out there that we visit on weekends, instead of something we belong to. And in that disconnection, we suffer. Science is finally catching up to what spiritual traditions have long known. Studies show that time in nature reduces stress hormones, improves immune function, and supports mental clarity. Even something as simple as walking under trees, what the Japanese call forest bathing, has measurable effects on our health. This isn't mythology. It's memory. Your body knows what real peace feels like, and it wants to go home. But you don't need a forest. Sometimes, all it takes is sitting in your backyard, walking in a local park, letting your bare feet touch the ground, watching the sunset instead of the news, listening to the sound of wind instead of more voices online. These are not minor acts. These are moments of remembering, moments where the body, mind, and spirit finally exhale together. The Buddha found awakening not in a palace or a temple, but under a tree. He didn't seek truth in complication, but in nature, in silence, in stillness. That wisdom is still here, waiting just outside your door. So the next time your mind feels loud and your soul feels lost, step outside. Let the earth hold you. Let the sky remind you. Let the wind clear you. Nature is not separate from you. It is your oldest home. And when you return to it, even in the simplest way, you return to yourself. Ask yourself gently, when was the last time you let the sun touch your face without needing a reason? When was the last time you listened to the world and truly heard nothing but peace? Lessons from illness. What suffering teaches the soul. No one wants to suffer. We avoid it, numb it, resist it at all costs. In our culture, we're taught to see pain as failure, illness as weakness, sadness as something to get over. But what if we've misunderstood suffering entirely? What if, instead of being an obstacle, it's actually a doorway, one that leads us somewhere far more real, more tender, and more awake than we've ever been before? I've sat with many people in pain, not just physical pain, but emotional, spiritual, existential pain. I've watched them struggle against their illness, demanding answers, searching for cures, clinging to the hope that things could go back to the way they were. And I understand that instinct. But there's something I've also seen again and again, a quiet shift. A moment when, instead of fighting the illness, they turn toward it. Not with fear, but with curiosity, with humility, with presence. And it's in that moment that the real transformation begins. There is something sacred that suffering reveals, the parts of ourselves we couldn't see when everything was going well. Illness humbles us. It slows us down. It strips away the noise, the performance, the illusion of control. It teaches us to listen, to soften, to ask different questions, not how do I fix this, but what is this trying to show me? Because behind every discomfort, there is often a deeper message. Behind the fatigue, a life lived out of alignment. Behind the anxiety, a body trying to protect us from an unsafe world. Behind the pain, sometimes the soul that hasn't been heard in years. In Buddhism, suffering isn't seen as a punishment. It's seen as a teacher. The Buddha himself began his path not with comfort, but with the raw confrontation of old age, sickness, and death. He didn't run from suffering. He sat with it. He studied it. He made peace with its presence. And from that place, wisdom arose. One woman I once met had been battling cancer for years. She told me that before her diagnosis, she had spent decades living for everyone but herself. Always saying yes. Always pretending to be strong. Never truly resting. Never truly feeling. And then, when cancer arrived, her entire world collapsed. At first, she fought it with everything she had. But eventually, she said something I'll never forget. This illness brought me back to myself. It forced me to feel, to speak honestly, to ask for help. For the first time, I feel alive. Not because I'm cured, but because I'm real. That is the quiet gift hidden inside pain. It strips away the parts of us that were never fully honest to begin with. It demands authenticity, vulnerability. It invites us to stop running and start listening to our own heart, to our body, to life itself. Of course, this doesn't mean we romanticize suffering. Pain is hard. Illness can be terrifying. But when we stop treating it as the enemy, we stop wasting all our energy on resistance, and instead, we create space for healing. And sometimes, healing isn't about the body getting better. It's about the heart breaking open, the ego softening, the soul remembering what truly matters. Modern culture tells us to push through, to stay strong. But there is a different kind of strength, the kind that knows when to rest, when to weep, when to ask for support. There is wisdom in slowing down, in letting go of who we thought we had to be, and becoming who we really are. The truth is, many of the most compassionate, grounded, and wise people I know have all suffered deeply. Not in spite of their pain, but because of what it taught them. Illness, loss, heartbreak, they are not detours. They are part of the path. They soften us. They remind us how fragile and precious life really is. So if you are suffering, know this: you are not broken. You are not being punished. You are being invited to feel, to slow down, to listen, to return, not just to your health, but to your soul. Let your illness teach you what no book ever could. Let it bring you back, not just to being alive, but to truly living. The Buddha didn't avoid suffering. He understood it. And in that understanding, he found freedom. What about you? What has your pain been trying to teach you all along? As the poet Rumi once said, "The wound is the place where the light enters you. Let that light guide you inward." Because the next step is stillness. And in stillness, healing begins. The healing science of meditation, finding stillness within. Sometimes, the most healing thing we can do is nothing. Just sit, just breathe, just be. But for many people, that's the hardest thing of all. We're used to fixing, doing, solving, pushing forward. So when we're asked to simply sit in silence, to turn inward instead of outward, the mind resists. It tells us it's a waste of time, that healing should come from action. But what if the very thing we're running from, stillness, is where the deepest healing actually begins? Meditation isn't about emptying the mind. It's about becoming familiar with it, watching your thoughts without becoming them, sitting with your breath without controlling it, letting your body soften without needing a reason. It's not about escaping life. It's about meeting life as it is, without the noise, the filters, the resistance. And in that meeting, something softens, something remembers, something heals. For over 2,500 years, Buddhist monks have sat in silence not to achieve something, but to return to what's already here: the breath, the body, the present moment. And in that simplicity, they've discovered a medicine no pill can offer: peace. Not a peace that depends on perfect conditions, but a peace that exists even when things are messy, uncertain, or painful. A peace that comes from within. I once met a man who said, "I tried meditating, but I failed. My mind wouldn't stop thinking." And I told him, "That means you did it right. Because the point isn't to stop your thoughts. The point is to notice them, to sit beside them like you'd sit beside a restless child, not trying to make them disappear, but simply being there with kindness and patience. That presence, that gentleness, is the healing." Modern science now confirms what ancient traditions have long practiced. Meditation has been shown to reduce stress, lower blood pressure, improve sleep, boost immunity, and even change the structure of the brain. MRI scans reveal that regular meditation strengthens areas responsible for focus, compassion, and emotional regulation. But beyond the science, there is something deeper, something you can only feel. That moment when your breath slows and the mind softens, and for just a few seconds, you feel completely here, alive, connected, at peace. You don't need to sit on a mountaintop or in a temple. You don't need fancy cushions or long retreats. You just need a few quiet moments each day. Maybe in the morning before the noise begins, or in the evening when the world winds down. Close your eyes. Feel your breath. Not to change it, but to notice it. Each inhale a reminder that you are alive. Each exhale an invitation to let go. And yes, some days your mind will race. That's okay. Healing isn't linear. Some days will feel calm. Others will feel chaotic. But the practice is not in the result. It's in the return. The return to this breath, this body, this moment. In Buddhism, we often say that the mind is like a lake. When it is agitated, you cannot see clearly. But when it becomes still, the water reflects the truth. Meditation doesn't create peace. It reveals it. It shows us that peace was always there, just hidden beneath the ripples. So if life feels overwhelming, if your thoughts feel loud, if your body feels tight, Try doing the opposite of what the world tells you. Don't run faster. Don't push harder. Just pause. Sit. Breathe. There's a part of you that doesn't need fixing. A part of you that is already whole, already wise, already still. Meditation isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you otherwise. And maybe, in that remembering, you'll find the healing you've been looking for all along. Not in a pill, a plan, or a promise, but in a quiet moment where you finally hear yourself again. Compassion as medicine. How kindness heals from the inside out. Stillness creates the space, but it is compassion that fills it. After sitting in silence long enough, something remarkable begins to happen. The mind softens, the breath deepens, and the walls we've built around ourselves, those quiet, invisible walls of judgment, fear, resentment, begin to loosen. And in their place, something warmer, something deeply human emerges, the natural instinct to care for others, and just as importantly, to care for ourselves. In Buddhism, compassion is not a luxury. It is medicine. It is the very foundation of healing, not a soft sentiment, but a force of transformation. When we treat someone with kindness, when we choose patience over irritation, forgiveness over blame, gentleness over harshness, we aren't just doing something good. We're shifting our biology. Our nervous system relaxes. Our stress levels drop. Our immune system strengthens. The body responds to kindness the way flowers respond to sunlight. And that kindness doesn't have to come from the outside. In fact, some of the most powerful healing happens when we offer compassion inward. So many people live with a silent war inside themselves. Harsh self-talk, relentless pressure, a constant feeling of not being enough. But imagine speaking to yourself the way you would speak to a dear friend, especially when you're hurting, when you've made mistakes, when you're afraid. That shift alone can change everything. Because when the heart is no longer under attack, the body begins to rest. And where there is rest, healing follows. I remember a man who had battled addiction for years. What kept him stuck wasn't just the substance, it was the shame. The story he told himself, that he was broken, unworthy, hopeless. It wasn't until he began to practice self-compassion, simply acknowledging his pain, without judgment, that the grip started to loosen. It wasn't easy, but it was real. The more he forgave himself, the less he needed to escape. And little by little, he came home to himself. Science now supports what the Buddha taught long ago. Studies show that compassion activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the system responsible for rest, recovery, and repair. People who practice loving-kindness meditation have reduced inflammation, lower anxiety, and even faster healing after surgery. It's as if the body knows, when we are kind, we are safe. And when we are safe, we can begin to heal. But compassion doesn't stop at the self. It grows outward, quietly, powerfully, into the way we speak, listen, walk through the world. The more we see our own wounds, the more we recognize the pain in others. And instead of reacting with judgment, we pause. We breathe. We soften. That's the beginning of true connection, not the kind built on perfection, but on shared humanity. One of the most healing things we can ever say to someone is, "I see your pain, and I'm here." We don't have to fix them. We just have to be present. Because sometimes the medicine isn't in a solution. It's in being seen, heard, and accepted exactly as we are. Think of a time someone showed you unexpected kindness. A moment when you were struggling and someone reached out, not with advice, but with presence. That moment may have changed everything. Not because they had the answer, but because they reminded you that you weren't alone. That's what compassion does. It dissolves isolation. It softens fear. It opens the heart. And an open heart is fertile ground for healing. When we let go of harshness toward ourselves, toward others, something miraculous happens. The tension in the body begins to melt. The mind no longer needs to defend itself. The breath becomes deeper, slower. We come out of survival mode and into life. True compassion is not about being nice. It's about being brave. Brave enough to feel. Brave enough to stay. Brave enough to keep our heart open in a world that often teaches us to shut down. It takes strength to be kind in the face of anger. It takes courage to forgive when the wound is still fresh. But that is the path of healing. Not through control, but through connection. Not through force, but through love. So the next time you feel overwhelmed by pain, by fear, by your own imperfections, try this. Place a hand over your heart. Breathe deeply and whisper something gentle to yourself. You don't need to earn your worth. You don't have to be perfect to be loved. You are already enough. Then, if you can, extend that same compassion outward. A kind word, a patient pause, a small gesture of care. These are not small things. They are the medicine the world has been waiting for. Because when you choose kindness, you are not just healing others. You are healing yourself from the inside out. Mindful nourishment. Eating simply, living deeply. In a world obsessed with diets, superfoods, and wellness trends, we've forgotten the most ancient wisdom of all: how to simply eat with awareness, how to be present with a meal, how to receive nourishment not just for the body, but for the soul. We eat with our eyes on a screen, our minds in tomorrow's to-do list, our emotions still tangled in yesterday. And then we wonder why we feel empty, even after we're full. But food is more than fuel. It's a relationship. It's a conversation between you and the earth, between your body and your mind. And when that relationship is unconscious, rushed, or filled with guilt, the body forgets how to trust. But when we bring mindfulness to eating, when we slow down, breathe, and taste, we rediscover something sacred. We reconnect with life itself. In Buddhist monasteries, meals are silent. No phones, no talking, no distractions. Just the sound of breathing, the clink of a spoon, the soft gratitude before the first bite. Each mouthful is received as a gift, because it is. A bowl of rice is not just rice. It is sunlight, rain, soil, effort, and time. It is a miracle of interconnection. And when you see that clearly, eating becomes a meditation. You chew slower. You feel more. You need less. One monk once told me, if you eat with awareness, even a single piece of bread can bring joy. That's not about deprivation. It's about presence. Because when you truly taste your food, when your body and mind are in the same place, nourishment becomes deeper, more complete, more real. Many of us eat not from hunger, but from habit, from emotion, from stress. We eat to soothe, to escape, to fill the silence. And yet, the more we eat unconsciously, the less satisfied we become. Because the hunger isn't in the body, it's in the heart. A hunger for stillness, for meaning, for rest. Mindful eating doesn't mean eating perfectly. It means asking, what am I truly hungry for right now? Sometimes the answer is food. Other times, it's a breath, a walk, a moment of kindness. When you pause long enough to ask that question, you begin to live more deeply. Because nourishment is not just what you consume, it's how you receive it, and how you allow it to shape the way you move through life. Science is beginning to understand what spiritual practice has known for centuries. Eating with mindfulness supports digestion, balances blood sugar, and reduces overeating. But beyond the physical, it offers something far more profound: a return to harmony, a sense of enough. In a culture driven by more choices, more speed, more consumption, mindful nourishment teaches us the beauty of less. Less distraction, less rush, less craving. And in that less, we discover something unexpected: more depth, more satisfaction, more clarity. You don't need a new diet to feel better. You need presence. You need reverence. You need to remember that the way you eat is part of the way you live. So the next time you sit down to eat, pause. Look at your food. Smell it. Thank it, even silently. Then take your first bite slowly, without distraction, without judgment. Let your body lead. Let your breath guide you. And let the act of eating become a prayer of gratitude. Because when you eat simply, you begin to live deeply. And that is a form of healing we've forgotten for far too long. Silence is the greatest teacher. Learning to listen within. There's a kind of wisdom that can't be found in words, not in books, not in conversations, not even in teachings. It doesn't come from outside. It rises from within, and it only appears when everything else becomes quiet. That wisdom lives in silence. In the modern world, silence makes people uncomfortable. We fill every moment with noise, music, podcasts, notifications, conversations, distractions. Silence feels awkward, even threatening. But have you ever asked yourself why? Why do we rush to avoid the quiet? Maybe it's because when the noise stops, we start to hear things we've buried, fears, regrets, truths. But maybe, if we stay just a little longer, we also begin to hear something far more valuable, our own voice. The Buddha did not find awakening in a classroom or through endless dialogue. He sat under a tree, in stillness, in solitude, in silence. And through that silence, he saw the nature of the mind. He saw suffering, but he also saw the path to end it. That kind of insight doesn't arrive through effort. It arrives through listening. True silence isn't the absence of sound, it's the absence of noise. The inner chatter, the constant commentary, the judgment, the comparison, the fear. When we begin to quiet that noise, even for a few moments, we enter a space where healing can happen, where clarity arises naturally, like a clear reflection on a still lake. And in that clarity, we begin to remember who we are beneath the stories, the roles, the striving. I once met a woman who had burned out completely. A career woman, a mother, someone always on the move. Her body had begun to shut down. Migraines, fatigue, anxiety, she couldn't shake. She came to a retreat and sat in silence for the first time in her life. At first, she said it felt like torture. But by the third day, something shifted. I didn't realize how loud it had been inside me, she whispered, and how deeply I needed the quiet. It wasn't a cure, but it was the beginning of something more powerful than medicine, a reconnection. Silence gives us back what noise steals, presence. When you sit in silence, you begin to notice the smallest things, the breath moving through your nose, the beat of your heart, the warmth in your hands. You begin to feel yourself again. And in a world where we're constantly pulled outward, silence pulls us home. Science is beginning to catch up to what spiritual traditions have always known. Studies show that regular periods of silence lower blood pressure, reduce cortisol, improve focus, and support emotional regulation. But more than anything, silence gives the mind space to breathe. And in that space, old wounds begin to heal, insights rise, and a deep sense of peace returns. But silence doesn't always mean sitting alone in the forest. It can be found in the pauses between words, in the early morning before the city wakes, in turning off the music during your drive, in walking without needing to talk. These moments may seem small, but they are sacred, because in those moments, you are finally listening, not to the world, but to your soul. The greatest teacher you will ever meet is already within you, but it speaks softly. It doesn't shout. It waits. And the only way to hear it is to be still. So take a moment today. Find even 1 minute of silence, not to escape, but to return, to listen, not for answers, but for truth. Because in the end, it's not the noise that changes us. It's the quiet. The art of letting go, releasing pain, embracing peace. letting go is not something we are taught to do. We are taught to hold on to dreams, to identities, to relationships, to control. We hold on to what hurt us, to what could have been, to what we think should have happened. We grip the past with clenched fists and call it strength. But sometimes, real strength is in the hand that opens, in the heart that softens, in the breath that says, I no longer need to carry this. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean giving up. It means choosing peace over tension, presence over memory, freedom over control. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is what happens when we hold on to the pain long after the moment has passed. Like a splinter we refuse to remove, we carry our stories, our betrayals, our regrets, letting them shape our lives, our health, our hearts. But pain has a season, and when that season is over, it asks to be released, not because it didn't matter, but because you do. There's a quiet wisdom in nature that understands this. Trees shed their leaves. Rivers release the rain. The sky lets go of the sun each night, trusting it will rise again. Nothing resists the flow of change, except the human heart. We resist because we fear the unknown. We fear what might happen if we stop trying to control. But in truth, the more we let go, the more life begins to move again, naturally, effortlessly, in harmony. I remember an elderly man who came to our temple carrying decades of grief. He had lost his son years before, and though the world had moved on, he had not. His body was tired, his eyes always heavy. He said, "If I let go of the pain, I'll forget him." But over time, through stillness, through silence, through listening within, he realized something deeper. He could let go of the suffering without letting go of the love. He could release the weight without erasing the memory. And when he did, his face softened for the first time in years. He didn't forget. He simply forgave life, himself, and time. Letting go is not an event. It's a practice, a daily invitation to release what no longer serves you, to stop fighting what already is, to make peace with impermanence. In Buddhism, we say that everything changes. Everything. This truth, once feared, becomes liberating. You begin to see that. Your pain, too, will pass. Your grief will soften. Your mind will quiet. Your heart will open again, not because you forced it, but because you made space. When you let go of blame, you create space for compassion. When you let go of expectations, you make room for reality. When you let go of fear, you remember how to trust again. The process is gentle, but powerful. It doesn't ask you to be perfect. It only asks that you're willing. There is no formula for letting go. Sometimes it happens slowly, like ice melting. Other times, in a single breath. One day, the thought that used to grip your chest passes like a breeze. One day, the name that once made you cry becomes a soft memory. And one day, you wake up and realize you feel light again. Peace doesn't come when life is perfect. It comes when you stop needing it to be. And sometimes, the most healing thing you can do is whisper to your pain, "Thank you. I've learned what I needed to learn. You can go now." So if you're holding on, gently ask yourself, is this still serving me? Is this pain still protecting me? Or is it keeping me from growing? You don't have to drop everything all at once. You just have to loosen your grip, breathe, trust, and take one small step toward peace. Because the moment you begin to let go is the moment you begin to come home to yourself. Mental detox, clearing emotional clutter with awareness. Sometimes the weight we carry isn't visible. It doesn't show up on a scale or in a mirror. It lives in the tightness of your chest, the shallowness of your breath, the tension in your jaw, the exhaustion that never goes away. No matter how much you rest, it lives in your thoughts, in the stories that play on repeat, in the quiet self-criticism, in the wounds you've kept tucked away, telling yourself you've moved on, even when you haven't. We clean our homes. We wash our clothes. We detox our bodies. But we rarely pause to detox our minds. We rarely look inward to ask, what emotional clutter am I still carrying? What old pain am I still holding on to? What narratives am I feeding every day that no longer serve me? Our minds are like rooms that need light and air. But too often, they're filled with unopened boxes, resentment, guilt, regret, comparison, fear. We push them to the corners, hoping they'll disappear. But they don't. They shape our decisions. They drain our energy. They cloud our perception of what's actually happening right now. And slowly, we begin to live not in the present, but in a version of life filtered through old pain. Awareness is the light that begins to clear the room. Not judgment, not force, just awareness. The gentle act of seeing what's there without turning away. In Buddhist practice, we call this mindfulness, being present with what is, without clinging or resisting. When you bring awareness to your emotional clutter, something powerful happens. You stop feeding it. You stop being ruled by it. And in that space, it begins to soften, to dissolve, to leave. I once met a young woman who couldn't sleep. Her mind wouldn't stop spinning. She had tried everything: therapy, supplements, even medication. But nothing worked. When she came to a mindfulness retreat, she was skeptical. Sitting still made her anxiety worse. But we didn't ask her to silence her thoughts. We asked her to notice them, with curiosity, with patience, with kindness. Over time, she realized it wasn't her thoughts that were hurting her. It was her relationship to them. She didn't need to silence the storm. She just needed to stop believing every cloud was the sky. Mental detox doesn't mean eliminating all negativity. That's not realistic, and it's not necessary. It means creating space between you and the noise. It means learning to pause before you react, to breathe before you judge, to see clearly before you assume. And in that space, clarity is born. Scientific studies now show that mindfulness practices reduce activity in the brain's fear center and increase activity in areas linked to emotional regulation and compassion. But beyond science, there's something deeply human about learning to sit with your inner world, to befriend it, to understand it, not to fix, but to heal. Sometimes the most powerful shift begins with a single question: what am I feeling right now? Not what should I feel? Not what do others expect me to feel? Just what is here? That simple act of naming your emotion brings it out of the shadows. And once it's seen, it begins to lose its grip. We are not meant to carry everything forever. Some emotions need to be felt fully and then released. Others need to be gently observed until they pass on their own. Either way, the key is awareness. Because what you resist persists. But what you meet with presence transforms. You don't need to clear out your entire emotional house today. Start with a drawer, a corner, one belief you're ready to question, one emotion you're ready to feel, one thought you're ready to stop believing. This is not a race. It's a return to the part of you that has always been clear, still, and spacious underneath the noise. Your mind is not your enemy. It's a garden. And with awareness, you can pull the weeds, plant new seeds, and let in the sun. You can make space for peace, clarity, and joy, not by forcing them to arrive, but by clearing what's been blocking the door. Because healing doesn't always mean adding more. Sometimes, it simply means letting go of what you no longer need. Mindful living, transforming ordinary moments into healing. Healing doesn't only happen in silence. It doesn't require a mountain, a monastery, or a retreat far away from daily life. Sometimes, the most profound transformation unfolds in the most ordinary moments. When we choose to be fully here, in the rush of everyday life, it's easy to miss this truth. We treat mindfulness as something separate, a practice reserved for a certain time, a certain place. But mindfulness is not a task, it's a way of being. It's how you brush your teeth, how you pour your coffee, how you speak to your child, how you listen to yourself. Every moment offers a doorway. The question is, are you willing to walk through? We spend so much of our lives waiting for the weekend, for the vacation, for life to calm down, for the right conditions to arrive. But healing doesn't wait. It begins the moment we decide to come back to the now. The moment we remember that this breath, this step, this cup of tea, this conversation is life itself, not a rehearsal, not a detour, not something to rush through. When we live mindfully, we stop postponing peace. We stop missing our lives. I once met a man who had spent years chasing spiritual experiences, always looking for something bigger, deeper, more profound. He traveled the world, studied with teachers, sat through long meditations, but still he felt restless. One day, his teacher handed him a broom and said, "Sweep this floor, but sweep it as if it's the most important thing you'll ever do." At first, he thought it was a lesson in humility. But as he swept, slowly, attentively, something shifted. He heard the sound of the bristles against the ground. He noticed the sunlight on the tiles. He felt the rhythm of his breath. And in that simplicity, he found what he had been chasing for years: presence. Not because he was doing something special, but because he was finally present for something ordinary. This is the heart of mindful living. Not turning away from life, but turning toward it, with gentleness, with attention, with love. It's understanding that how you do anything is how you relate to everything. When you move through your day with presence, the mundane becomes sacred. The ordinary becomes medicine. You begin to realize that healing doesn't require escape. It requires arrival. Modern life teaches us to multitask, to be efficient, to keep moving. But the nervous system doesn't heal in speed. It heals in slowness, in spaciousness, in softness. When you eat, eat. When you walk, walk. When you rest, rest. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being alive. When you practice mindfulness in daily life, you create a field of awareness that surrounds everything you do. You begin to notice patterns, how stress shows up in your body, how emotions move like weather, how joy is often hiding in plain sight. And with each small act of presence, something shifts. You become more rooted, more kind, more connected. One woman once told me that mindfulness saved her life, not because she stopped suffering, but because she learned how to suffer differently. She no longer ran from discomfort. She no longer believed every anxious thought. She simply began to meet life as it was, one breath at a time. And in doing so, her life changed. Not dramatically, but deeply. That is the quiet miracle of mindful living. It doesn't shout. It doesn't sparkle. But it brings you home. It teaches you to treat each moment as sacred, not because it's rare, but because it will never come again. And when you live like that, every step becomes a healing. Every breath becomes a prayer. Every day becomes enough. You don't need more time to be present. You need only this moment, and this one, and this one, because life is not happening somewhere else. It's happening here, and healing is not far away. It's already begun. Wholeness, becoming the healer you were meant to be. There comes a moment in every healing journey when the question shifts. It no longer begins with what can help me, but with what is already whole within me. That shift is subtle, but profound. It is the moment we stop seeing healing as something we must chase and begin to recognize it as something we can uncover, something that has been quietly alive within us all along. Beneath the layers of pain, past, and fear, there is a part of you that has never been broken. And when you begin to live from that place, you are no longer just someone trying to heal. You become the healer. Wholeness does not mean perfection. It does not mean that your life is flawless or that you no longer feel pain. It means you have stopped fighting yourself. It means you have come home to your body, your mind, and your spirit, and you have remembered how to listen. Healing is not the absence of pain, but the presence of awareness. Wholeness is the deep knowing that you can hold joy and sorrow in the same breath, that you can feel lost and still walk forward, that you can be soft and still be strong. Throughout this journey, you've learned how to sit in stillness, how to breathe through discomfort, how to listen with compassion, how to let go with grace, and how to live mindfully in a world that often pulls us away from presence. These are not small things. These are the roots of transformation. And now, you carry within you not just the tools, but the wisdom. You begin to notice the difference in how you move through the world. When someone speaks in anger, you don't absorb it, you observe it. When fear arises, you breathe with it instead of running from it. When your body whispers that it's tired, you rest without guilt. You eat with awareness. You walk with presence. You offer kindness without needing recognition. These are the signs that healing has taken root, not because you read about it, but because you've lived it. And slowly, others begin to feel it. Your presence becomes medicine. Your calm becomes contagious. Not because you are trying to fix anyone, but because your wholeness reminds them of their own. This is the quiet power of someone who has returned to themselves. You do not have to call yourself a healer to bring healing into the world. It is in your tone, your eyes, your stillness, your love. When you live from wholeness, every space you enter becomes a little softer, a little more awake. Buddhism teaches that we are all Buddhas in disguise, not because we are meant to become something else, but because we are meant to remember. And what we are remembering is this: you are not missing anything. You are not broken. You are not separate. The wisdom you seek is already within you. The healing you crave is the natural outcome of returning to that truth. There may still be days when you forget, days when the old patterns come back, when the mind gets loud again, when fear resurfaces. But the difference now is you know the way home. You know how to return to your breath, to the present, to compassion. And each time you return, you become a little more rooted in the truth of who you are. You are not here to be fixed. You are here to be whole, to embody the peace you've touched, to share the light you've uncovered, to live with depth, with presence, with love. You are not just someone on a healing path. You are the path. You are the healer. You always have been. Final transformation: embracing a life of true well-being. Take a deep breath, not to calm yourself, but to remember that you're alive. This wasn't just a video. This was a return to stillness, to truth, to the place within you that was never lost, only forgotten. You didn't just learn how to heal. You remembered that you are already the healer. Every breath you take with awareness, every act of kindness, every moment of letting go, that is healing in motion, not in theory, but in life. Along this path, you've sat with silence. You've breathed through pain. You've touched compassion, clarity, and the quiet power of presence. You've remembered how sacred ordinary life can be when seen through mindful eyes. Now ask yourself, what will you carry forward? Let it be the breath. Let it be the space between thoughts. Let it be the deep knowing that you don't need to wait for peace. You can return to it right now. This moment is the real teacher. This body is the temple. This breath is the medicine. And this life is the practice. And if even one part of this journey stirred something inside you, if you felt even a flicker of calm, of clarity, of hope, then this was worth it. We invite you to stay with us, not because you need more content, but because sometimes we all need reminders of who we are, of what matters, of how to live well. Subscribe if this space feels like home. Share it with someone who needs to breathe. Leave a comment and let us know what shifted for you, because your voice matters. Your healing matters. You matter. There are more steps ahead, more breaths, more quiet revelations. And when the world gets loud again, come back. We'll be here, waiting in stillness. Until then, may you walk slowly. May you speak gently. May you live deeply. Because healing isn't the end of something. It's the beginning of everything.